in the MAC division where I got all kinds of directions on how to turn the presentation into a publication.
Going to research panels and professional panels and seeing faces like mine.
CSM and MAC are always finding ways to make sure that our voices are heard.
This is the story of MAC, the Minorities and Communication Division.
I joined AEJ in 1972. There was a minorities division, MAC division, that I could join. Lee Barrow and others had put it together. And it was not all people of color. There was a lot of white professors who were involved in the wake of Martin Luther King's assassination, the Kerner Commission report, and Lee's presentation at the Chicago Convention in 1968, basically a challenge to this organization to get serious about it.
Lee Barrow's open letter read at the 1968 AEJ convention urged AEJ members to take positive steps to end the de facto discrimination against blacks entering the educational and business world of mass communications. The convention approved a resolution to establish the Ad Hoc Coordinating Committee on Minority Education. Lee Barrow chaired the committee. After 3 years, members of the Ad Hoc Committee realized AEJ needed something more permanent. One of the members of that ad hoc committee was Alan Bussell, who met up with Edward Trays, an early researcher in the area of race diversity at newspapers.
I made an acquaintance, friendship with the journalism professor at Clark College in Atlanta. His name was Alan Bussell. It may have been W. Alan Bussell. I don't remember exactly. It was B-U-S-S-E, and it's one or two L's at the end. Anyway, he unfortunately passed while he was very young. But before that, he and I were at the Washington Convention working on an article for Quill. And we got to talking about minorities because the subject of the article was something dealing with recruiting and training of minority individuals. And before you know it, we were saying, why don't we just start a division? I mean, it was that simple. And we made some inquiries about what we had to do. So we went out and did that that day. Maybe the next day too, and then we got enough names. We had to get 15, and I think we got close to 50, something like that, who were willing to sign up as new members of the Minority and Communication Division of AEJ. And that's how it happened. I mean, Alan Bussell and I went around that convention with petitions, and we collected signatures and $2 from each person. And by the end of the convention, the division had been approved, and Lee Barrow, who had a career in advertising, became the first head, and he was African American. I came along soon after, and we continued to grow the division.
I was one of the first members of the MAC division, and so I shifted my presentations from theory and methodology to MAC. But I noticed we were speaking to the choir. You look at the audience, look at the membership, we were maybe 80%, 90% people of color. And I wondered, Lee and I talked, okay, how do we reach this prominent scholars that are not attending our meetings? So that was one of the things we tried to do. Okay, we get the Steve J. Viz, the Max McCombs, our prominent scholars. Okay, join in. And I think we were sort of successful, and expand the membership, because we, by we I mean people of color, we can't do this alone. We should be leaders. We need allies, people who think likewise, not necessarily the same skin color. And there are some of those folks around.
MAC's membership roster in those early years included quite a diversity of members, former AEJ presidents, and those who would later lead the organization.
So by the time I joined in '72, there was a division that had a newsletter still here. So that was very helpful to me for AEJ to have that, because at Stanford, I and a couple other guys, we thought we were the only ones that cared about anything about race. And then you start getting this, monthly newsletter called Still Here, and it was mainly black, but it was about racial issues in the media. And it was somebody's doing this, and and all you say, hey, there's a larger pool out there. And I think a lot of us were isolates. We were the only person here in this program or that program.
Still Here was a career-oriented newsletter that published 11 times a year. It included everything from information on upcoming communication conferences to FCC news briefs and diversity-related news stories. Beyond publishing as many as 6,000 copies of its newsletter, the Minorities and Communication Division was also a place where important connections were made.
It was through the support of particular faculty who were part of AEJMC that I got greater validation for what I was doing as a Latino, as an emerging Latino scholar. My first AEJMC convention was probably in 1976. I think it was that summer that the AEJMC convention took place at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I just happened to step into the room where all the papers had been distributed. Back then it wasn't electronic. People made copies and left copies of their papers, and I kind of stepped in kind of on the margins and saw this organization and all the papers, and subsequently I attended a few of these conventions, became a member, started receiving the journals, and in conversations with people like Felix Gutierrez.
I remember going through the AEJ directory when I first joined, the first years, and looking for Spanish surnames and not finding them except for those who were from Latin American universities. Is there anybody else like me out there? I later found out, while I was still a graduate student, there was Joe Lewells at UT El Paso, who did not have a Spanish surname, was Chicano, and was doing similar things. He was getting his PhD at Missouri. So at least there's one other person, with the same interest that I have that's out there doing it.
MAC division was special, still is special to me, because being at Iowa, being the only African-American faculty member in journalism for 18, 19 years, we got one person in for 2 years and then she left. So it's kind of like, being the only one. When I would come to conferences, it was so wonderful being able to hang out with other folks like me.
A 1978 AEJ resolution designated the Minorities and Communication Division as a leader in the association's efforts to recruit and retain minority journalism students. Robert Ruggles chaired the AEJ Minorities Task Force that, together with MAC Division leaders, drafted what would become Standard 12. The Diversity and Inclusiveness Standard was adopted in 1984.
But we got it in our heads that if we were going to give some teeth to this suggestion or recommendation in the Kerner Commission report, that newspapers and other media do a better job at recruiting minority personnel, we needed to concentrate on the place where those minority personnel might come from. And that meant to us, after looking at the standard for accreditation, that there needed to be something in the standards that required university journalism and mass communication programs to actively seek out and promote minority faculty and recruit minority students.
Over the years, the MAC Division has become a place for budding researchers to share their work, make new connections, and learn leadership.
With its Minorities and Communication Division, this is where anybody who does research about minority issues or diversity issues has an opportunity to get their work evaluated. Even if it's not accepted for a convention, it's evaluated and given feedback that could contribute to the enhancement of that research. For those whose papers and panels are accepted, when they attend the convention, it is a place where they gather and have full support, and they don't have to justify. It's a given that it's valued.
I was inspired about doing research when it comes to race and ethnicity, that a colleague of mine, a fellow graduate student, and I did what's called a review of the literature, and we looked at all the studies that had been published on blacks in television and newspapers, etc. And so we kind of brought all that literature together so it would be in one place, and then we presented a paper on that. You know, essentially it was a literature review, meta-analysis as some would call it, and from that we published an article in Journal Broadcasting.
I first came to AEJ as a second-year doctoral student, and I immediately gravitated toward the MAC division because that's where my paper was accepted, and that was the best thing that could have happened. I went to that to present my paper. The professors were so encouraging. The other people in the division were very encouraging.
As a graduate student, Paula Poindexter found a home in MAC as she began presenting and publishing her research.
So my involvement with AEJMC, that not only was I, recipient of this important minority doctoral scholarship, that I became active in the MAC division. In fact, that very first year that I ran for office, they said, okay, well, you run for this office, and I did, and so I was elected to my first office there, and I was presenting research, and so I was doing all of the things that you would do if you're going to end up with an academic career.
But that was just Poindexter's first tour of duty with MAC.
And I'm a member of many groups, but the one that I'm active with is the MAC division. So this is the same division that Dr. Barrow had founded. And through this division that I eventually was elected, I think first vice head and then head. So my leadership really kind of came through that.
In 2009, Poindexter became the first recipient of the Loyola Barrow Award for Distinguished Achievement in Diversity Research and Education. Felix Gutierrez won the award in 2011.
Yes, good morning. It is indeed a pleasure to present the 2011 recipient of the Barrow Award, Dr. Felix Gutierrez. Dr. Gutierrez is a professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California. So please join me in honoring Felix Gutierrez with this award.
Over its 50-year history, the MAC division has been the place where dozens of books got their start as refereed research papers. A 2021 analysis of 661 papers presented over a half-century showed women as the most frequent first authors, and the most frequent presenters in the MAC division have given refereed research presentations as many as 9 times. In 2015, the Howard Journal of Communication published a special issue featuring 5 manuscripts originally presented in the MAC division. The research footprint of MAC members goes far beyond the MAC division.
There comes a time when people say, well, I don't want to just present in the Minorities and Communication Division. My work is good enough and it should be valued in the Communication Theory and Methodology, in the Newspaper Division, in the Advertising Division. And as these people, these scholars and students, present their works in the other divisions of the organization, then diversity is acknowledged and valued and expanded in those other divisions as well. So it's good for the solidarity that is built around those who attend the Minorities and Communication Division sessions and the business sessions and whatever else, and also for the other divisions that need and are really in great need for enhancing their diversity.
As I recall, as head of the MAC division, I think my focus was more on the members themselves and trying to get the members of the MAC division themselves involved in the division, but also in other divisions. I was more focused on wanting us to be a part of the overall picture. And so in my programming, for example, as head of the MAC division, I aggressively reached out to other divisions that we had not, or to my knowledge, had not co-sponsored programs with.
The MAC division is now supporting research through the Paula Poindexter Grant Program. Each year, faculty and graduate student MAC members may apply for the grant. Christina Ezekar was among the first Poindexter Grant recipients. She says receiving the grant was just one of many things she likes about being a member of the MAC division.
What I liked about AEJMC is I always knew that there would be some sort of presentation that I could do there, right? Because MAC was, the Minorities and Communication Division was always really active. And even though I found it predominantly African-American when I went in, I always had so many friends and welcomes, and everybody's always stopping me and saying, hey, Christina, hey, Christina.
The MAC division has always had a primary focus on mentoring the next generation of media scholars. No place is this more evident than in the Carolyn Stroman Awards program.
We're so excited today to meet some of our up-and-coming scholars in the MAC division. The Stroman Awards program is an initiative that has been going on for now 5 years in the MAC division, and today we'll get a chance to meet 6 of our 14 2020 winners.
It's been great to have support. I actually did participate in the MAC mentorship program my first year when I got involved. And so I'm still in touch with that mentor. She actually just passed on an opportunity to me to write a book review. And so it's been nice to be able to use those connections even still now as I'm serving as a professor.
I think 2017 was a good year. I was recipient of the Stroman Award. I think my experience a tiny bit different because I was doing my PhD overseas. I was in Hong Kong. So coming here and doing the job hub in AEJMC and getting all the support from MAC, kind of like having a way, like talking with other professors or just watching them. I remember watching Melody and watching Nia, watching George, and just kind of like absorbing everything that is MAC